turn off my happy Monday, everybody. We'll give this a minute or two for you all to come in. I just want to make sure that you can all hear and see us okay. If you could let me know, that would be great. And also let me turn off my dinging and donging. That's always fun. Bear with me. All right. Awesome. We're live. The reason I hesitate, everybody out there who's listening, and hey, Kevin, good to see you, is there's always this little bit of a delay with Restream. So it starts and you guys don't see it on YouTube for a little while. So thanks for hanging in there with us. Yeah, happy MLK to you all, and MLK Day. Obviously in the States here, not only is it MLK Day, it's Inauguration Day, lots going on in the US, and but lots going on as always in the world of cyber, and that's what we are going to talk about today. Mac reached out to me, and I'd been tracking this. What started, Mac, right, as another 0 day earlier, a few days before what we're going to be talking about, and we'll probably be talking back and forth between both. But boy, this seems to be the gift that just keeps giving, Mac. I mean, whether it's and not that this isn't about picking on vendors, but whether it's Fortinet or SonicWall or Avanti, right? This seems to be the threat actor du jour. What they're focusing on these days. Am I right from your perspective, Mac?
Absolutely. And I mean, I feel like this has been a theme since 2003, just on the basic best practices we keep talking about. But I think we have a whole hour to get into that. But yeah, I'd say this is like a continuation of the desensitization, or really focusing on what I would consider like threat actors cutting their time in half, being able to target these edge appliances and place a pretty good bet that there's some misconfigurations going on.
Yeah. Well, we're going to definitely talk about that, and I'll get to intros in a second. But yeah, in setting the stage, I mean, this seems to be like the monthly affair. Whether it, like I said, those three, but by and large, I mean, if you look back, Bob, it kind of right around the pandemic time. That's when threat actors really started to say, you know what, there's something here with VPNs, and we started to see it quite a bit right as the pandemic unfolded and people went remote, and VPNs really started to get used considerably more, obviously, as a result of not being in the office. Do you think that was part of like the smoke became fire, Bob? Like, when you see,
I think it was a perfect storm, honestly. I think it was, being the pandemic forcing everybody to go remote, right? So that turned the sample size up of places where you could go test these practices. It turned it up an order of magnitude or two, right? So, they were already working that angle, but there were limited people who were really using it to the volume. Nothing like the volume we saw during the pandemic, right? Where just about everybody's virtual. So just from a target standpoint, it went from being a little bitty puddle to being an ocean to go play with. And then it's just a matter of time, right? Because they're going to try these statistically. They're going to keep trying. We also know, we already know credential theft is the number one methodology for doing these things, right? And that works on VPNs as well. So I think these were all just related in that they had a lot more practice space to work with. Still using, I know I like watching Mackenzie's veins pop out her neck when she starts talking about people that haven't been doing the standard shit we've been trying to tell them to do for the last 10 years, right? I mean, it's hard to sugarcoat that. She'll do it. I'm not any good at it, so I won't talk about that. She's better at sugarcoating it, but that's part of it. So I agree with you. I think it was a perfect storm that allowed all this to get to be a lot more prevalent.
Yeah, but Bob, everybody uses 2FA on VPN, so I'm surprised this is happening, aren't you?
Yeah. I just hope you're grounded so lightning doesn't hit you square in the head, because we all know that ain't true, right? So,
I mean, I'm not trying to be a pessimist on just the VPN
Yeah.
conversation because it's rising, but I don't think we've even seen the full picture yet as far as
Yeah.
even the SSL vulnerabilities out there. I think there's, not to be a bearer of bad news or doom future scaping, but I'm a little concerned we don't even know the full extent because of, like you said, Bob, the VPN usage, and that's the number one thing too that becomes a continuation of an issue in SOCs, and monitoring makes it real difficult.
Yeah, I'd second that. I think we'll probably get into that, but definitely agree with that.
Yeah, Aaron, I see you shaking your head, right? So you obviously have background, as we'll talk about in a minute, from obviously NSA days, but do you think there's more supply chain stuff here that we haven't even started to uncover?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a complex situation, right? And just one of the things is, one vulnerable library, right, that can cascade through multiple, one vulnerable SSL library, whatever, can cascade through multiple different appliances, software packages, et cetera. So there's probably going to be a lot more to unpack as the year goes on, sadly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get on into it. So let's start with some intros. And Mac, as you intro, I mean, a lot of people know there know you, but is there just one last question to you as you intro? Like, I mean, money aside, I mean, why aren't people just sunsetting VPNs and going to like a ZTNA solution right now? Like, I mean, I just, again, I get it. It's like we can't get people to still do MFA sometimes, but like,
right.
If money weren't an object, would everybody be on a ZTNA and VPN sunset, in your opinion?
Yes, I believe if money wasn't an object, I think if the conversation between a business decision, operationally, creating productivity, and just general cybersecurity, if that wasn't something that had to be continuously battled apart in the boardrooms, I think a lot more organizations would be adopting this. And now, I mean, you flip it on the side of the MSP, they're now having to manage all these organizations and say, do we default deny them, basically saying, hey, we won't support you unless you do XYZ of these basics. And a lot of that isn't going on, nor is it, again, productive for business to be able to do them. So yeah, I zero trust is something I'm sure we'll bring up many times, but it's the architecture of it is seemingly complicated and expensive, but I think that's where we need to start moving as far as how we're supporting them.
Cool. So how about an intro, Mac? And thanks for joining as always.
Yeah. Mackenzie or Mac Brown, many of you know me. I'm at Blackpoint Cyber. I'm the VP of the Adversary Pursuit Group, or APG, which is our very cool, fancy name for our threat intelligence and threat research team. So we really work close in hand, in step with our SOC to be able to take what's going out there, be able to provide accuracy, and then also really being able to say, how does this impact all of our partners, and perform as much predictive analysis as possible that is contextualized intelligence. And I will toss it over to my cohort, Aaron, here, who also works with me on this team.
Yeah, welcome, Aaron. Good to have you, man.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. It's another good, probably not in the best circumstances, but good to talk to you again in a couple of weeks. So Aaron Shaha, I work with Mackenzie on the APG. I'm the Chief of Threat Research and Intelligence. I think Mackenzie hit on a couple of key points there that are really interesting, right? So everybody gets confused on the purpose of intelligence, and really what we're here to do is reduce uncertainty, right? We can't predict the future. We can't mind read. We can't, tell you what's going to happen specifically, but we can, talk in probabilities and try and help you understand, kind of the lay of the land as imperfect information that we get in does. So that's kind of my job day to day with Mackenzie inside, informing the SOC, informing our client partners, looking around, kind of downrange and trying to be forward looking as to what's coming while understanding what's out there and what's hitting us now, like we're doing right now.
Yeah, good. And Bob, thanks for joining as a co-host. For those that may not know you, quick intro for yourself.
Yeah, Bob Miller. I am the Chief Operating Officer, Global Data Systems, and the founder of IR Game, which is an instant response game, online game. And man, I've been working all day on my inauguration. I'll tell you this, Andrew, that we're expecting about 8 inches of snow in Lafayette, Louisiana. We're expecting 6 to 8 inches of snow in the next couple of days. So I've been working on my inauguration day, hell frozen over jokes all day. So I was looking forward. I was really looking forward to getting into this, but I've been watching some of the comments too, Andrew. A lot of people are pointing out, even if you gave them zero trust, if it was a business process change and it was inconvenient, it'd sit right there, regardless of whether it was free or not. So I'm in agreement with these people.
I'm hearing and I see and thank you for the comments. Please keep them coming. I get it as well. You know, there are some really good solutions. This isn't about tech right now, but it was more just kind of a hypothetical, like, do we need to get off of these solutions? And yes, change is always painful and people don't like change, this, that, and the other. But then again, people don't like their entire business down and their data exfiltrated either. So, you know, again, we have to, you know, pick our poisons here. Okay. So Bob, with that, let me throw it over to you to kick things off here with the team and get it going.
Yeah, absolutely. So this, Mackenzie, this is for you because I'm curious. I am so dying to hear what your and Aaron's perspective on this. But what in the hell is going on with FortiGate? It's hard for me to tell which notice that I'm looking at nowadays, right? Because they're starting to look a lot alike and they're starting to come so frequently that I can't tell the damn things apart. So what in the hell what is going on with that, right? And then it seems to be a consistent theme, right? Now we go from 0-day to full breach, and I'm concerned that they're not telling us everything, like source codes being jacked from there, right? Because that's another thing they could do when they get in and breach FortiGates. It's not that they didn't breach FortiGates. So go ahead, take it from there.
Back in the day, so I think we're talking about today. I mean, or what prompted it is there's this new group, Belson Group. They're basically doing new year, new us. Nice to meet you. Put up a site. Here's a data dump of 15,000 targets. The one side of that, we all know from a target perspective, even though this is allegedly connected back to 2022 to 2023, there was a lot of Chinese hacking operations going at that time. Fortinet was getting hit left and right. They also were silently fixing things and then waiting a few weeks to release the update information to people. And so we were used to being left in the dark. And so now they're saying that this Belson Group is promoting themselves with this lovely marketing strategy of, spinning up a Tor site. Here's the data dump, know our name. We're here to help. So the concerning thing here, and this is probably a theme of like what you said, we're seeing a lot of things we're trying to recently, and by recently, I mean just in 3 weeks, SonicWall, Avanti, the Microsoft Purview stuff, Clio, we're still dealing with those things. So we're trying to, you can imagine our Teams chats are starting to get less clarified and we have to almost just have so many war rooms just to organize all of them. But in this data dump, you have basically every IP is connected to full firewall configuration, which we've seen a lot of this. It's connected to VPN passwords, plain text. In many cases, the device management certificates, and in not all cases, but apparently they're saying more, is firewall rules. So you're not just getting access to a privileged system, so you're gaining priv escalation initial access very easily, and you're moving on to the next thing, but you're almost getting a little bit of reconnaissance information about the organization you're targeting in the first place, how well they do management as far as firewall rules too. Not saying they're any, but there may actually be some very easy targets. And everyone's saying, okay, so what? There's a patch for this. This is old versions, 2022. That's 2 years ago. But the concerning thing that we all know is people still there are still actually easy targeted paths here of unpatched, outdated organizations from 2 years ago. That's super common. I mean, we saw the SolarWinds stuff. We saw some of these sonic walls hitting these vulnerabilities that were causing these investigations. They're still hitting a year, 2 years later. So, I mean, we're long and the short. Basically, we see these 0 days, specifically this one, is we can imagine any 0 data now, especially when you see them packaged on one specific vendor, that it could be connected to threat exposure notices from years prior. We know people have a difficulty patching, updating their environments. All in all, this just cuts the time for threat actors' resource constraints to be able to perform a lot of what they need in their attack chain when they've already accomplished by targeting the edge. So we're going to see an increase of this is, again, targeting the edge.
Can I bump in there, Bob, for a second?
Sure.
I mean, aside from what you just outlaid, which was awesome, Mac, Aaron, I mean, isn't this open up a pathway also for awesome phishing? I mean, if you know specifically 15,000 organizations, I mean, what a what a brilliant phishing campaign you can put together. No.
Oh,
So was that to me or to Mac, Andrew? Sorry.
Here's you, Aaron.
So one of the problems we have, and it's a little bit of a rant of mine, I have many, but is we tend to look at these events as discrete elements in time, right? Hey, Bob's PC just got hacked. Okay, we wiped it, we patched it, whatever, right? We brought it back and recovered it, put it back online, and now we're good to go, right? The reality is there's a reason that there's a P in APT, right? The persistence, right? Not every attack against you is an APT, but probably more of them than you think you are have some sort of larger group behind them, right? And we do a disservice by kind of splintering up these groups, right? We have like 52 different pandas, right? There's probably not 52 different pandas in the world, right? There's probably 6 or 7, right? And we look at these attacks as very isolated events, and they're not. They're all related, right? And exactly like you said, Andrew, right? Maybe the adversary gets this information, pivots to phishing. Maybe they're just trying to understand something larger about the organization, or kind of going with the theme that we started off with about supply chain, right? Maybe they're looking for kind of connections. Maybe you're a supplier to a larger organization that they want to get into, right? And now there's VPN tunnels there that they can exploit to get into, right? So there's a lot of different things that can happen here, and this is a really complex domain. But especially like just looking at these boundary devices, right? It's not just the attack on the boundary device, right? There's lots of different ways that an adversary can come at you from this.
Yeah. Bob, since you're so interested in the inauguration and politics, how do you think the secure by design is going to look like at this? Again, is that going to be something real? Do you think that's going to gain teeth? Shouldn't this be now? Again, if you look at that mantra, this is a Fortinet issue. This isn't, I'm air quoting, right? This is something the manufacturer should be responsible for, and not the end users always taking the brunt of. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, you want to talk about a rant, Aaron. This is one of mine, right? Because look, I'm a software developer by training. So, yes, what's going to happen? We don't have a damn choice. The vendors that create software and create operating systems for these devices, they're going to have to change the way they develop code for the future. It's not going to work the same way it's worked forever, right? You can't have unsigned DLLs in your shareware libraries that your damn firewall depends solely on, right? I mean, unsigned DLLs in a production piece of code, a small thing, a very small, Aaron will tell you, small thing, huge ramifications, right? So we're really going to have to get a lot more deterministic about how we do these things. We're going to have people are going to have to get some damn discipline at the code level. And I am tired of us MSPs taking the fall for what I consider just sloppy, lazy, or greedy companies not spending the time and effort to harden their systems when their systems are part of a cybersecurity ecosystem. There's really no excuse, right? It's like telling airplane manufacturer, don't worry about the doors. The doors are the least thing we worry about, right? It's just the seats we care about. It's the same thing in this case. So yeah, you have to design this stuff like that. And Aaron and McKinsey will tell you, you can look at a config file from someone's firewall and tell a ton about that whole organization. It tells you more than what the lines are and what it does. It tells you how their minds are organized. It tells you what their logic is. It tells you how they go about doing what they do. It's like reading your palm for somebody who's an actual palm reader. So it's very difficult. And McKinsey, this segues right into the next question I had for you is from a technical perspective, are we seeing a flaw, and I haven't my own opinion, but I want to hear yours, are we seeing a flaw in the way that the design and architecture of that software on the device itself, the Fortinet device and how it's built? Are we seeing that it's being exploited so much because of a flaw there? Or is it more on the side of configuration errors? What's your opinion on that?
I think it's both. I think on one side, we have had significant, like you said, supply chain issues and scenarios over the past 5 years, especially. We've seen packaged it. We're almost desensitized to whoever vendor it is, because it could be everything from SonicWall releases a bunch in 3 weeks to what Aaron and I are dealing with, Fortinet, and trying to connect the dots, because there is also a lot of Fortinet, FortiGate, everything's getting released right now. So yes, on one side, I absolutely think that it is a software issue. And again, not to be doomsday, but I'm concerned that there are more out there that haven't been revealed. This is a lot what Aaron and I's team works on from a research perspective is we see things in the wild. This is the benefit of having a SOC. And when you pull apart what is going on or what the threat actor did, we can examine the actual version and what's going on with some of these devices and say, wait, these are clean devices. These are patched. We can't figure out how they were able to execute some of these tactics on this system. And that's when a lot of these 0 days come up. Like, oh, wait, there might actually, oh crap, there's actually 0 day on this, we think, but we have to wait to confirm it. And this happened a lot with the Clio stuff.
I was gonna say that's what happened with Clio.
Yeah, right.
It's
100%.
literally, it was
Single
hacked.
MDR, I can tell you, we were all seeing the same thing in real time. It's almost like we were holding hands together because we were like, this is a 0 day. Like this is getting hot. So yes, I think I think the software aspect, I think we don't see the full picture yet. We're only picking up almost pieces of the breadcrumb, and it's a matter of time before we see a full on. This is also the concern we have with these vendors is, like you said, this is an opportunity for POCs to be developed on how to be able to dump things like config files, use firewall rules, use the passwords and creds, and then the syndication Aaron's talking about, the opportunity for ransomware operators to say, oh, hi, shake your hand, let me take this data because I could use this also. And then the conversation around persistence. My biggest concern has always been in past experiences, a backdoor or something more silent getting hit on or hidden and embedded, like you said, in some of these vulnerable locations of these software. And there is something more deeply rooted, connected in all these systems, whether they're patched or not, which is a 0 day, but it's more a persistence mechanism that concerns me. And then, yep, the other side of the coin is misconfiguration. I mean, it's no surprise. Aaron can attest to this too. And it's either, I think there was actually, I'm gonna have to look up the stat, but Microsoft pulled out the recent stat for the MDDR this year. Is everyone's concerned about social engineering and phishing, but it's misconfigurations and weaknesses. That's one of our biggest issues that we have collectively. And so it's one thing to be able to say, okay, well, can you use a VPN and put MFA on it? It's like, no, but can you use a VPN? Only trusted devices or trusted IPs. You're connecting to a jump box internally. That's even saying you are creating the zero trust concept, multiple layers of that buffer zone to be able to access it, making the threat actor say, okay, this is too much work. Let me just socially engineer someone and get in instead.
You just made Phyllis Lee really happy at CIS with secure configuration, Mackenzie. Too bad she's not.
Oh, good. Yeah. So I think it's both. I mean, yeah, a lot of my answers will be, it depends, D, all the above, or both. But yeah, Bob, I think misconfigurations are something we all are having big issues with. And then my doomsday brain is like, there's just something more to this that would be way more impactful than a bunch of RCE vulnerabilities, right? A bunch of authentication bypass capabilities. Like we're going to continue to see those, but I'm more worried about the vendor getting hit at a deeper level in the supply chain.
Yeah, the thing that I find ironic is how easy it is to get either a tool or even in readily available help in looking at configs to tell if they're configured to best practice. It is not the hardest thing in the universe at all, right? To get some help on a device that you've got, just to make sure you got best practices related to the configuration, right? Geofencing and all the other things. These are small requirements for a device that is so critical to the ecosystem, right? So it floors me how easy that is and how many people don't take advantage of it. So that, as it relates to this particular actor, I mean, something was interesting. And again, I always have an opinion about these things because I'm like you. I think this is a long-term play, and I think some nation states are involved, and I think they're involved in getting access, and I think they're involved in putting that out for all of the two dudes and a dog that want to go create chaos and try to make some money. And I think they're just seeding the ground, right, for that, because when they really want to disrupt us, what's going to be the best possible cover if it's coming from 100 different directions, 1,000 different directions, and it's
100%.
little things that keep us occupied while the big things are actually going on, right? I can see this I'm like you. I'm concerned about our inability to connect the dots with these things and understand that, hey, these are, in my mind, these are precursors to someone setting themselves up to be able to disrupt us in a big way at a much bigger level than just an enterprise. I think these enterprise ones are people getting the benefit of that data being released. And that was a question I had for you. What's the deal with them releasing? What do you think the deal is with them kind of releasing this data and not just holding on to it? Again, I think I got my opinion, but I want to hear your and Aaron's shot on that.
I mean, that's a really good one. It's been 2 years. They weren't obviously the original threat actor group.
Right.
It's a fairly new group that's coming out. I think what we see a lot of, and Aaron and I can, drink whiskey all day long talking about this pretty much, is the affiliation changes of these nation state APT groups. We are just barely, like you said, too many pandas. There's just so many groups out there now. I mean, we're looking at our top ransomware ones that we commonly see. We're seeing what Clop is doing. We're seeing how Ransom Hub has become extremely popular as well, but it's based on the amount of attacks. But then you look at Alpha V, Black Cat, and then you look at new up and coming ones. How do we know that's just not a spinoff of the other group?
Exactly.
So I think that's the biggest issue I see too, is we're trying to narrow it down to these threat actors, which those are valuable to have some profiles around them, but it doesn't necessarily tell us the big picture of this. Why would they leak it now, right? How do we know this Belson group isn't just an affiliate of another larger nation state APT?
Yep.
Yeah.
They're basically saying, hey, be my friend. We cleaned up this data for you in a very nice subfolder so you can access all the things that you want to get. And there's a high likelihood that a lot of these are going to be helpful. I mean, what we did too is a big part of us is like, okay, how do we take some of these real-time events, what our SOC is seeing, and start to do hands-on partner outreach? That's the big goal for us, is how does it impact our partners? How can we help them now and get ahead of the game? And some of the scans we were doing with the Fortinet stuff, there was a handful of them coming back as WatchGuard. This is just cross-correlation. But as a really good thing, we reached out and said, hey, they're like, oh, well, we don't use Fortinet. Like, okay, well, we're seeing this. They're like, it's WatchGuard, but we didn't know it was exposed. So actually, thank you. This is concerning. Everything's an opportunity at that point. We're like, okay, yeah, let's look at that then. How can we help you remediate it and harden it? And that's, we're I don't want to say we're losing the game, but we're too far behind the bad guys at this point. We're far behind. So we're just trying to make predictions and keep up with them.
Bob, can I answer your question indirectly?
Yeah,
so,
please.
So I really like the question, actually. So my gut kind of tells me like this is just chaff or noise, right? It's out there to distract. I could be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong, but it feels weird, right? The timing, and it's an old, right, new group. I don't know. There's a lot of weirdness there. The thing we need to keep in mind, tying into what Mackenzie was saying, it's really important to understand, especially for MSPs who don't deal with this stuff every day. There's multiple groups out there, and those affiliations do shift. And not necessarily exclusively, some of them are sponsored by nation states who then give the money to organized crime, right? The research to organized crime, who then go out and further those nation state objectives and, oh, by the way, make money for themselves, right? So it's really complicated that way, really muddy. The thing that's not appreciated out there is there's multiple layers of groups, right? So you have the initial break-in group, right? You've got the guys out there who scan, right? Then you have a smaller percentage of that, let's say 10%, that actually go kick in the door and break in, right? Those guys generally, not always, will go sell that access to somebody like a data broker, who then goes internal to the network, harvests the data, steals the data for that double extortion that we're now well familiar with, right? Pilfers that off, and then sells that access yet again to a ransomware group who's going to exploit the network. The dirty secret is the ransomware guys might actually implant another backdoor. If you don't have a good IR process there, they might actually resell that access yet again, right? Now, that doesn't mean that all of those pieces aren't part of one master group, right? I don't want to push any country out of the bus. So let's say the Krasnovians, right, have an intelligence organization, right? They could be doing all of that, but it could also be a loose affiliation of groups, some of which are sponsored by states, some of which are sponsored by organized crime, some of which are sponsored by all of the above, that have various interests in each of those pieces.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. I think you and Aaron, we could sit in a room and draw this on a big ass whiteboard, right? And it would be really interesting to say, here how that ecosystem kind of ties together based on what we can see externally. So
yeah, it's gonna look like the Always Sunny in Philadelphia guy, right? With red.
Yeah,
right.
It'd be a great conversation for whiskey.
Yeah, the prediction today is more ransomware coming from the east. Yeah, I'm with you.
Right.
All right, Andrew, over to you for now. You got
so Aaron, one thing I am curious about is the timing of this whole thing, right? So let's just go back 5, 6, 7 days. I forget exactly the day, but we had this FortiGate vulnerability, another 0 day that came out. Then this comes out. So do we have a sense, is there correlation? Do we have a sense of, how do they get all these configs? Is Fortinet saying anything? Because, they would have had to get the Fortinet themselves into some master database. And I haven't read anything about that. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
So not to sound too paranoid, and maybe I am, man, that's fine. I don't believe in coincidences, right? I've been between my military time, my intelligence time, right? And my time is like, there's not that many coincidences, right? So yeah, are these two things related? I would bet a steak dinner on yes. How? I'm not sure yet, right? Now, maybe some of this was this exploit's been out there much longer than we know about, right? Just because it's a 0-day doesn't mean the adversary hasn't been using it well ahead of time, right? Or was there, I think Mackenzie said, was there another one that they were harvesting, right? It's really hard to tell, right? And the actors aren't really going to go out there and say much, but maybe they got burnt. Maybe they realized that this one was getting burned and they got sloppy, and or maybe Fortinet got lucky and caught it, which is what it appears for the latest one, the 9.8, right? That's a really severe remote access vulnerability, right? And that's why I'm suspicious about this leaked credential thing coming out, because it seems to be taking our eye off the ball, right? The current one that's very nasty, right? We're looking at, hey, this thing that happened maybe 2 years ago by this weird unknown group, and there's all this credential spillage, right? Like it feels like they're shaping us to take our eye off the ball. Again, I could be totally wrong on that, but that's kind of what my gut tells me.
Yeah. Hey, Mac, did you have any comment? I saw you shaking your head a little bit. Did you have anything you wanted to add there?
No, I mean, I agree a lot with what Aaron's saying. Is it wouldn't shock me, it wouldn't surprise me if this is, like you said, low-hanging fruit in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily a distraction, but absolutely low-hanging fruit vulnerability that we're all aware of, even the data dump. Like, we're all not surprised by it. We're more intrigued by, I would say, I got to be careful how I piss off people.
No, you don't. Lock and load. Let's go.
Run with it. Let's go.
Right.
I think we're going to need to we're having one conversation on the misconfigurations and actual adoption of things that we want people to run through, right? Like, why are we still exposing our management interfaces? Why are we still doing that? And if you have to, like, maybe if you can't stomach limiting IPs, go through again the VPN jump box. Let's try and work together to create a solution. But almost some of these solutions feel like Band-Aid solutions, because on the other side, I'm more concerned about vendor transparency. I mean, as I've always been. But when you start seeing 20 vulnerabilities or 0 days getting hit in a year, you're really curious of what have you guys done from an after action to clean that up? Like, what does secure design look for you? Like, why aren't you talking about your equities process? Like, who discovered this, or how were you notified this existed in the first place, right? Because researchers are I'd like to say researcher communities getting a little bit better, where they don't automatically post a POC online in many cases. They do reach out to the vendor. But then how does everyone else see the other side of that? Like, who notified you? How did they find it? Was it found in an active incident, or was it someone just stress testing the system? So those are all the unknown questions of transparency that I don't have a lot of faith we're going to get those from any vendor, but I do. That's where my curiosity always lies too, is like, how did they find it? Because now we're kind of all not working together in that realm of getting ahead of it.
Yeah, fair. So Aaron, I got a question for you. And I'm going to pose it to Bob in a slightly different way. But for you, if you're a customer using Fortinet right now, and hey, it's patched, or you patch this, and what's the recommendation? Are you really patched? If we look at the Clio thing, what if you were, just a consultant today, talking to an organization, running the Fortinet, what's that conversation look like with their IT, leaders?
Yeah. So cut me off if I go too deep here, because it's pretty complex. There's no easy answer, right? So MSPs in particular have a challenge where they're trying to remotely administer a lot of these boxes in a lot of different places that are probably geographically disparate, right? That's not easy, right? But the big thing is we got to get these remote management ports off the internet, right? They need to be secured. Wrap them in SSL or some sort of VPN, right? We talked about earlier that might not be the right answer either, given everything we've seen. Zero trust, sure, but it's really hard to get zero trust right for the most part, from what I've seen. And if your user base isn't ready for it, I think it was Bob said earlier, right? They're just going to work around it, and it's going to undermine you. So get them off the internet, right? That opens up its own set of challenges. One of the things we've gotten away from in this industry is foundational blocking and tackling. Somebody in the chat posted it. And getting back to basics, right? Like, we don't do network segmentation anymore. We don't do auditing of the firewalls like Bob talked about anymore, right? We just put it in the cloud and we assume everything's good. Well, kind of, except there's a new ransomware tactic out there that adversaries are using, where there's credential stuffing into your Amazon account and then encrypting your Amazons. That's going to be much worse than I think, or a much worse impact, right, for you than if your local on-site VM got nailed, right? Because AWS, there's a lot of data out there, right?
Yeah.
So we need to go back to kind of the blocking and tackling, network fundamentals, really look at how do we do secure access. That's MFA, all the stuff we talked about, right? Probably IP whitelist, as bad as that sounds, right? But we're kind of running out of answers.
Yeah.
I know, right? Like,
it does work. I mean, it actually does work.
Yeah, it works. I mean, a lot of these things don't have price tags too, but I just love that you said network segmentation. A lot of people have been saying that lately.
That was awesome.
Network segmentation, the tramp stamp tattoo of zero trust, but everyone forgets that it's
Mac, I can't remember if I told you the story or not, but one of the last IRs I worked was a small, we'll say they're in the manufacturing vertical, and they had offices all over the US and one overseas. The adversary popped the overseas network, and the MSP saw something happen there. They weren't sure what it was, but they dropped all the VPN tunnels at that point, and that saved their bacon, right? Because the adversary completely smoked that other network. Just giving yourself time and space to have that time to think, right? Okay, yeah, you know what? Maybe our network admin will screw up every now and then and kind of take the service down for an hour or two. But you know what? I'd rather err on that side than losing everything to a ransomware attack. It's just going to blow through a flat network, right? So I really do think that's important to get back to those fundamentals.
That's fair. Bob, quite, people don't like me talking hypothetical I'm joking around in the chat. They're like, no more hypothetical. But Bob, you were, let's just say you were running Fortinet. That was in your stack. You've been dealing with this, 0 day and vulnerability after vulnerability in the web interface and the FortiGate OS, et cetera, and now this. What are you doing as an MSP? If they're, are you still trying to work things out with Fortinet, as a partner? Like, because third party risk management, Eric brings that up as a lot, which is fair, right? You're representing this company, right, through your stack to your customer, but this is causing a lot of constant work for you because you can't sit there and bill your customer. You got to go fix it and patch it and whatever, right? So what are you doing at this point?
Well, look, so Fortinet can take a deep breath, because I'll tell them this. It doesn't matter who the damn vendor is. If they have a pattern like the pattern we're seeing in this case, then yeah, we're not on that platform. We're not going to, we don't wait until the 18th time, something happens before we pull the trigger on this, right? We've got a really low tolerance for anything that comes from this. I can tell you, SolarWinds was a perfect example. SolarWinds, we watched them very carefully for the next year, right? Because if there would have been a pattern established in that situation, we would have got our ass off of it. And it would have been a forklift upgrade, and it would have been difficult to do. It would have been all that OpEx cost to go pull it off. We wouldn't have had any choice, though. At some point, if you're an MSP and these patterns are forming and you continue to stay on that same horse, then whose fault is it at some point, right? If you're really responsible for your customers' networks and this pattern, there are other pieces of hardware that do the same job that do not have this pattern. So how are you going to explain that to a customer that, you know what, I'm sticking with these guys because I've known them for years and I get the best discount rate? That is not going to cut it. Right. That shit is not going to cut it as a conversation with a customer, especially when you're dealing with larger enterprises and you're doing co-managed work with them and they're taking your recommendations and putting them in these much larger networks. You just don't have the luxury of doing that, right? So from an MSP perspective, regardless of who the vendor is, if a pattern starts establishing itself, we don't have a choice. It's like you can't unsee it. I always say you can't unlook a cat. Once it's happened, it's bloody well happened. You can't unsee that. You have to go and make something happen. And to your point, the other indirect point of this is if they're having these problems, the MSP's bearing the burden of the labor to go clean that mess up. It's not like they're going to give you an extra 20 points on the next device you buy to cover your labor for cleaning that crap up. That's not how it works, right?
It's also distracting the crap out of your SOC and your team. And
it's a cultural problem at that point, right? You're wearing your people out and they don't know where to. I mean, you know how it is. You shoot a shotgun off behind somebody's head long enough, they flinch when somebody rings the doorbell, right? I mean, so that's just stress on your team. So you just have to mitigate that. So you really don't have a choice. In my opinion, when patterns like this start showing themselves, I don't have to say anything. You're a logical person. You need to make a damn logical decision in this situation, which we would do, categorically we would do.
Cool. Good. I love it, Bob. Aaron, I was going to ask, we've talked about the next question a little bit, which was, sunsetting older architectures. Let me, in favor of like a ZTNA, we beat that one up. And the chat beat that one up. So let me ask you a little differently. And again, this is opinion. Cyber insurance. What do you think is going to happen there? Meaning, okay, are they going to sit there and go, hey, look, to Bob's point, you're sticking with the solution. It's known to have, defect after defect after defect. No, we're not going to pay. It's your fault for staying with a fault. Like, could we see because insurance companies can pretty much do what they like to do, right? It's almost like, we in here in Florida with the hurricanes, there's always these clauses to allow them, that it's your choice to live by the water. It's your choice to do these things. So therefore we won't pay. What are your thoughts that might start to come out of these recurring companies that are having these 0 days vulnerabilities and then going to your cyber carrier and going, okay, we need you to cover this?
Yeah, there's a lot there. I do agree. I think there probably will be some pushback from the insurance industry, right, at some level, trying to assign blame, maybe to the MSP, maybe to the owner. Maybe there's some litigation coming. I mean, EULA reform really needs to happen, right? The fact that you can just have a mandatory click-through piece of code or text on your device, on your software, or whatever, that just completely removes all liability from you just doesn't seem like a viable solution, right? Especially with the threats we're facing. So I think there's probably going to be some interesting litigation that comes out over the next year or two. I think we're seeing a little bit of that from the CrowdStrike debacle, right? That's happening, at least some of what's been reported in the press. So that might force some things. I think we are going to see insurance companies definitely look at and be more strict on, like, what are you putting into your network, right? Who's responsible for that? Who's patching it, right? And you're right. I mean, they're not in the business of cutting checks, right? And they probably shouldn't be for that to stay in business. Bottom line.
Got it. Sorry, I'm just getting rid of somebody.
Yeah, can we boot that guy?
Yeah, I am. I'm doing.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Really horrible.
Give me the ID of that person. Jeez.
That's the kind of thing you should do, right? Start taking shot at cybersecurity people.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So we got rid of that person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So Aaron,
About to go and turn into Fight Club in here for a second.
all right. So Aaron, last one for you, right? And then I'll turn it to Bob. But what are you guys seeing? Are you seeing, I guess, patternistic, MSPs having multiple of their customers dealing with this? And if so, how are you kind of coaching them through this? Are you seeing exfiltration? Are you seeing, kind of a concentration at a single MSP level? And if so, how are you guys working through that?
To go back to Mac's earlier answer, right? It depends. Yes, there are some people, right? I think Bob made a really good point about, hey, this is kind of the horse you brought, right? And you've got a lot of investment there. You get good points on that for your business deal, but this is going to have to be looked at. So yes, there are certain MSPs that have concentrations of this, right? Of these types of problems, right? And they're not all going to be the same, right? Some are going to be deep in with Sonic Walls, some are going to be deep in with FortiGates, some are going to be kind of a mix, some are not going to have any. The trick is you should always assume that data exfiltration is happening, right? It may not, but it's really a good going in, right? Just like we assume breach, right? We should assume that somebody's going to try and exfil our data if they can get a hold of one of these devices, right? Whether that's a misconfiguration, just punching a hole in your firewall, pulling the data down, right? Whatever. You should assume that data is going out, because that's really the important part of that double exfiltration scheme or the double extortion scheme that we're seeing.
Just curious, is any of this potentially, like, are you seeing any, I don't know, I guess for lack of a better word, holes in the logging data? Like, is there any of that going on where you can't, part of this, the reason they're doing this is to, obfuscate exfiltration because they have access to these configs. Yeah. Is any of that possible, Aaron, that this is part of it?
So are we seeing that currently? No. Is that something that a moderate to advanced attacker could do and does do? Yes. They will definitely send your logging to the ground, right? They'll inject bogus data, things like that. That is certainly possible. And especially when you're controlling these boundary devices, right? One of the powers of modern EDR, SIMs, right? Everything that we're sending everything up to the cloud, all that's got to route through. And if we can modify DNS at a boundary device, right, we can send that to ground, right? Now that's an advanced hacker that's doing that, but that is certainly possible. And then that kind of, I think where you're going with that raises the possibility of, we're not seeing everything. Right. Yeah. And by we, I mean the industry, right?
Right.
Like are we seeing that currently? I don't think so. We're seeing attackers that are good enough to get the job done, and they kind of don't care.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
But a more advanced attacker, somebody like Assault Typhoon or something like that, that's totally possible.
Okay. Got it. All right, Mr. Miller, back to you.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit tactical now, Mackenzie, because I mean, you guys are a threat intelligence organization, and I don't think most people understand the process of actually building that threat intelligence, right? Because I don't think they know about the volume of telemetry that you're getting when you're actually pursuing an event like this, right? To determine what the depth and the complexity is. Can you talk a little bit about, I know how many volumes of records are pouring in, right? Because, we have a SOC, so we see the same sorts of things, but making any kind of sense of that is the thing that I think is the magic when it comes to people who really know how to do threat intelligence. So how do you guys, what do you look for and prioritize in telemetry when you're first taking a look at an event like this to figure out, try to start establishing what the framework and the foundation of the attack is, because you got to know that before you can go figure out how to run it to ground. So what kind of things do you look for and prioritize when you're doing this?
Well, I'd say from the intel side of the house, right? Our first phase is understanding what we're looking at in general in front of us. If it's something like this, being a 0-day, how is it exploited? What does that actually mean? How common is this? Or is this kind of like a new technique versus what we see all the time for half the exploits that are getting thrown out there? Can we blow it up? And then because we're Blackpoint, our MSPs are our partners, right? We're looking at the MSP side of the house. Why does this matter? So the criticality of the thing in question, is this something that MSPs commonly use? If we're seeing things released into the environment that are interesting to us, as far as like the S3 buckets for AWS and how those could be potentially tackled, that may not necessarily hit all of our enterprises. And I'm sure Aaron could I'm just thinking of all the other ones in the past week we've looked at where we're like, do MSPs really care about that right now? And how much of an impact is it? So it's really first addressing why does this matter and what is the impact? And then also getting a temperature of the equities process and where you're at with it as far as disclosure, who found it, are there POCs out there right now to exploit it? All of that kind of bundles together as far as we've contextualized what is in front of us. We are able to define what it does and what the impact could be. And then for us, it's phase 2. What is the actual impact to our partner base? A lot of these get hit, and you see Matt Lee out there all the time doing it, and I love it. It's the first place we go, showdown, especially in a lot of these cases, is what is the general impact to society just off the bat? And usually it's pretty big, but for us, we need to narrow it down to our partner base. And then we need to filter out from our scanning procedures who's actually impacted by this specific, outdated version, this specific vulnerability, like who is impacted. And how do we define remediation steps that are plausible and realistic? Giving them a whole list of, everything we've talked about today as far as trusted IPs and do this, that would be great. We could absolutely sit on the phone with them and do that. But we're going to find the most reasonable remediation steps for them off the bat. And those tend to be sometimes redundant after a while because they are the remediation steps we recommend. So from an intelligence we're looking at what's going on out in the wild. We're comparing it to what's going on in our SOC, because a lot of the things that we're talking about now with the edge being targeted, we're concerned about post-exploit traversal. They're going to gain a lot off of this just from what we're talking about, from a discovery perspective, privilege escalation. But we are going to really focus on the tradecraft that we commonly see, which is that lateral movement. So there's one aspect, what is our SOC seeing? How can we empower and educate our analysts? We all have a pulse on what it's in the wild, what's going on. Have we been able to now take all of this information and make it actionable? And that's really what the goal of intelligence is we have the research aspect and the cool collection aspect and the reporting and dissemination of it, but it's how do we make it actionable? Because that's what MSPs I know really want is action. So how are we providing steps? How are we keeping the conversation hot? How are we tracking historical relevance of other vulnerabilities that could be connected to this, like what we've been saying with one vendor? How can we predict they're going to potentially change? How can we predict from a business perspective, MSPs, like you said, moving off of specific vendors? And that's going to change a whole lot of pathways, right? They're going to move from one vendor, they have to go to someone else. And that's a new target. And everything that we're looking at from an intel, I always just assume adversarial groups are doing the same exact thing. They're understanding where we're at in this thought process. And so actionable intelligence is what our gain is in this respect.
Yeah. All right. So we keep talking about this patching and updating. So, I mean, I keep trying to come up with some sort of equation to tell me what percentage of people are just not any good at this, but it's so depressing to think about, to be honest with you. But I the point of doing these measurements though is to look at a relative statistic. Are we getting better at it or not? Right. So from Blackpoint's perspective, are we seeing, what are you seeing? What does the trend look like? Because look, the break-ins are happening. I mean, we see them all day, every day. But I think the question is, are we getting better at this particular aspect of running, our operations, or are we not? And the only way to really know that is to kind of look at it from when the flames are licking the ceiling. That tells you that's not getting handled, and how many flames are licking the ceiling over what period of time is kind of an indicator. So from you guys' perspective, yours and Aaron's, do you feel like that's getting to be, is that being addressed better or the same? Because I'm not going to say worse, because I don't know how much worse it could actually get, to be honest with you. So I'm going to say the same or better from your opinion.
How can I be optimistic? I would probably say the same. I don't think it's getting worse. I think it's getting a little bit better, but the level of improvement's not enough. We're still seeing things unpatched and exposed. I mean, management interfaces exposed to the internet. This is insane.
From years ago.
And this cuts the time. From years ago. And that cuts the threat actor's time to execute. And then everything Aaron was talking about, all the other vast opportunities a threat actor has once they're in. That could be persistence mechanisms, selling initial access to brokers, data dumps and exfiltration. Now we're seeing all of these file transfer based softwares getting hit because Clio wasn't the first one. Like, we're seeing all these patterns, but we're not, I don't know if it's a matter of improvement versus what you said, relativity, and really saying, okay, how can we improve? Because people are still exposing themselves. Hopefully that doesn't get clipped, but they're still exposing themselves to the
What a great
outside
hot
world.
take. Be sure and get that one.
We need to be more
I know what my LinkedIn post is tomorrow, Mac.
Yeah. Everyone's flashing each other. We really need to knock it off. But yeah, I would say, if I was to really look at it, the same. Because the conversations our SOC analysts are having with partners directly on the phone to manage some of these things. It's the same thing. We're just recommending the same stuff. And I think things get overlooked, right? You scale it just like you'd scale a business. You're gaining more customers or clients. You're gaining more network environments. That's a lot to handle. Like you said, resource constraints consistently to keep up with all of these things that we have to manage. Secure configuration and having some sort of baseline is the ideal goal, but people still, realistically struggle with that. And MSPs absolutely struggle with that. So,
I mean, you'd think auto updates would be something we could point to, say, hey, but you just do auto updates. But we've seen what that's done to us over the last few months, right? So you can't even really depend on that. It's just such a cognitive load to understand the scale and the scope and to manage that in a realistic way. And that workload is not getting any easier, like you point out. Absolutely not. Andrew, it's back over to you, sir.
Yeah, Aaron, last few minutes here. Hey, it wouldn't be a webinar or a podcast these days without using the term AI, would it, Aaron? But I am, LLMs, I was fortunate enough to do a webcast with you, which was awesome. But I am curious, whether it's file transfer, software or these, firewall, internet facing, management, or that this commonality is there any, in your estimation, going back to your threat intel, your intelligence days, right? Do you feel LLMs are being used? Like, it's like, hey, there's some fire here. Let's just keep pounding on this thing with machine learning, because I mean, it would seem that if I'm a threat actor and I keep churning at this over and over and over, because that's what, just my layman's brain is thinking. Is it possible that they're using some of that and type of technology now to help them with this?
Short answer is yes. Longer answer is right. Not only LLMs, but you kind of hit on it there, machine learning, right? All the subsets of artificial intelligence are being leveraged. Are they autonomous and are the Terminators going to get us tomorrow? Not in my opinion. Are they speeding up some workflows like you talked about and augmenting the adversary as well as the defenders? Yes, right? So again, I think we talked about it on the last one, right? This is the 10-foot wall, 11-foot ladder problem, right? Where, the defenders built in some AI to help tradecraft, right? Speed them up on some things. They built that 10-foot wall and the adversary saw some of that and said, hey, that's awesome. Let me build something that's going to speed me up, right? And now they've got the 11-foot ladder. I don't think, in my opinion, AI is never going to become sentient, right? We're not going to have, the Terminators walking down the road, but we are going to see a bit of an acceleration, and pattern matching is going to become very important, right? That's really what machine learning is great at, right? It's finding those patterns, right? And those things, those tradecraft screw ups by the adversary, right? Where they come in, where they beacon out every 5 minutes instead of randomizing it, right? Things like that. So short answer, yes.
Got it. So in closing, here's what I'm wondering, if there's kind of the, nugget recommendation, for the business leaders that are on, the MSPs that are on, to deal more effectively with this common thread that we're seeing with these internet, facing devices, again, whether it's firewalls, whether it's, file transfer protocol type things, what would one nugget you'd leave them with, Aaron?
Don't assume you're not a target. I still hear far too often people say, oh, nobody care about me. I'm just a little old business down in Louisiana with Bob, right? Who could possibly care about me? The internet's worldwide, it's global. You are a target. Doesn't matter how many people you have. You may be a means to an end. You may be the end state, but just don't assume you're not a target.
Yeah, and isn't that possibly? Isn't that what automation? Like, in other words, automation isn't looking specifically at company X.
Right.
Automation is just being opportunistic, isn't that
exactly? For sure.
Yeah, awesome, Mac, Aaron, that was phenomenal. Really, really insightful. Great views, Bob, and yours as well. Really great stuff today from you, as always.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and our attendees. Thanks a million for all the fantastic comments, and really appreciate you guys as always, as our community, helping out each other, and making the best of making each other better. So with that, have an awesome week. We'll look forward to seeing you next Monday, and make it a great day, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, you're right.
Well.